Hello, today we're going to be talking about plastic pollution and a potential remedy. And just a little quote here for you that the smallest change can in fact make the biggest impact. From me, by the way. So just to get started, this is a very, very pressing matter. We will get into this a little bit later. Plastic, being toxic to the environment, to human beings, etc. Again, we'll get into that later. For now, just starting with a couple of facts here. So currently there are 269,000 tons of plastic in the ocean. Now, that is a lot more than anyone can imagine. Another piece of information here. There's 8 million new pieces of plastic placed in the ocean every single day. So that's, again, an incomprehensible number. And it actually makes up 80% of all marine debris. And when we're talking about debris, we're talking about wood, not only plastic, wood, glass, any other material you can think of, metals, etc. Just because plastics degrade a lot slower than any other material. Like wood is organic, metals corrode, they oxidize, etc. So plastic is unfortunately very, very toxic. All right. So just to get started on my point of view here, who's to blame? It is extremely complicated. So just to get started on my point of view, from what I've seen, from the research I've done, I can see here that bottled beverage companies and grocers, retails, those big box companies, those are the ones, in my opinion, that are to blame for the plastic pollution problem, right? So this kind of takes a weight off our shoulders. We shouldn't really be the ones to blame, and that's, again, my entire point of view. So just look a little bit more into this. You look at this photo, you think to yourself, well, guilt, right? You feel bad as an individual for being somewhat responsible for something like this, but you do have to realize that something like this, of this scale, cannot be done by a consumer. This is something that's been created by big producers. Plastic is a cheap material. It's cheap, it's extremely strong, it's flexible, it's sterile, has a lot of benefits, but being so strong, it does last a long time. And companies did notice that this is a really big feature of plastic. So, you shouldn't feel guilty when you see something like this. This is not entirely our fault. Again, in my opinion, we should place some or all of the blame on plastic producers. Again, big beverage companies, big box stores, retailers, etc. Right? So, just as a bit of proof, I'm not going to say that just like that. Coca-Cola, it's a very, very good example of this. So they pump out about 200,000 plastic bottles a minute. Yeah. I just did the math really quickly myself. That's about 3,300 bottles per second. Right? You can also imagine that these bottles, 3,300 per second, also end up in the landfill. In my research, I've seen that plastic bottles are kind of a disaster when it comes to recycling, so that's unfortunate. And also, they have been deemed the worst plastic polluter in the entire world, which is why I chose this, the multi-billion-dollar company, Coca-Cola. Among others, there's like Danone, the yogurt company, among others. Palm Olive, like that dish soap you see around. There's Nestle, those humongous companies. They are most likely to blame, again, in my opinion, but it's kind of a fact, as we can see here. So what can we do? This is my proposed solution. So we live in a democracy, and that's fantastic news, right? Good news, right? So because we live in a democracy, the people have the power. Now, the people having the power, granted, there is no corruption. There's nothing else wrong within our democracy, which is obviously not true, but that's for another day. We can actually vote for something like a plastic cleanup mandate, right? So I'm sure you hear the word mandate and you're like, oh no, but it will not affect you and me. So kind of just like the COVID-19 mandates, there was mandates for personal protective equipment, vaccination, and business closure. And this was all for the health and safety of those around us. So, plastic pollution is also a health and safety concern for everyone around us. We should really look into that a lot more. Just a final word on the matter. We can see that microplastics are a potential biological risk, and it's just as serious as the pandemic.